NIO is China's most high-profile electric vehicle startup. It's the first to go public on the Nasdaq, and at the day of the filming, it still has the biggest market value. Their production car journey started with the ES8. The car we have here today is the facelifted 2020 version and is actually nearing the end of its product cycle. However, to understand NIO as a brand, ES8 still is the best starting point. It is an ambitious, big SUV with thundering performance, full-on luxury, and some interesting smart features. I have done many media events with this car. If you don't know my background, check the video in the description. As an ex-NIO employee, I have the balls to say that this is the definitive NIO ES8 review. Let's get to it. Launched in December 2017, the NIO ES8 dropped a bombshell onto the Chinese car market. Because with the exception of Hongqi, the state-owned brand that produces all the cars for national leaders, this is China's first luxury car. Pricing starts at $66,000 and could go all the way to $88,000. That is a serious price wherever you are, and the ES8 needs to be a seriously competitive car to back it up. At over 5 meters long, you surely get a lot of car for your money. The ES8 has the interior space to rival the BMW X7. The example we have here today is a 6-seater version, fully kitted out for a family with 2 kids and grandparents. In here, it is full-on luxury. In terms of layout, it's a halfway house between Tesla and the traditional manufacturers. You get the big displays, but you still have enough physical controls to make you feel at home. The use of Nappa leather on the ES8 is expansive. It extends all the way to the center cover of the steering wheel. Because this part houses the main airbag, to have this part covered in leather is very difficult and expensive. To have this in a Mercedes, you would have to go all the way to the S-Class. There's clever packaging as well. With a totally flat floor, it opens up a huge storage space in the center console, and the center glove box could be locked by a password on the center display. Why hasn't anyone thought of that? A big deal of the ES8 is its smart capabilities. At the center of it is the NIO operating system. NIO regularly pushes out new updates to give the users new designs, new features, and in the case of version 2.6.1, a completely retuned air suspension and adaptive dampers. So your car could be feeling totally different just after a system update. And then there's Nomi, the in-car AI assistant. I need to emphasize that it is not just a voice assistant. The stuff it does without speaking is just as important, if not more important, than the voice command part. I've done an extensive workshop with the inventor of Nomi, Ted Lee. Maybe in future we will do a dedicated video on this little thing. Battery swap also made its debut on the ES8. As the name suggests, it swaps in a fresh battery in under 5 minutes. The whole process is completely automatic. You don't even need to step outside of the car. And what I'm talking about here is not a technical demonstration. It is very much a reality. We're going to try it now. When I get the call, I press this button on the screen and all starts automatically. I don't need to operate anything. I can stay in the car, avoid the rain, avoid the snow, and it's a very premium service. Just leave the car to park itself into the station. Let's start the swap. While the car is swapping the battery, let's talk about the battery swap network. In China, NIO has built more than 1,100 battery swap stations. It's swapping at 35,000 swaps every day. And cumulatively, it has finished over 11 million swaps. So the reliability and the usability of battery swap has already been verified in China on a huge scale. Now the new battery is fitted, we're just waiting for the system to wake up. I must emphasize that this, to some degree, still is a very surreal experience. You will remember your first battery swap for a long time. The system now wakes up. I'm waiting for it to give me the all clear to select drive. I could do that now, and out the car goes. I just finished a battery swap. The reason battery swap really shines in China is because most Chinese people live in high-rise apartment buildings where installation of home chargers are much more difficult than Europe or the United States. So a concentrated, highly efficient power solution like the battery swap is many people's prerequisite when purchasing a NIO vehicle. Depending on where you're watching this video, this may or may not apply to your local region. But one thing I think we can all agree on is this battery swap is particularly useful if you want to go ultra long distance. The ES8 could also be charged like any other electric vehicles. Look at the superchargers behind me. It can charge up to 140 kilowatts if you're in Europe. If there is a queue in the battery swap station of more than 2 cars, you can charge at the superchargers right next to the station for free. The distance in between the stations are determined by the original ES8, which is slightly more inefficient than any of the NIO current vehicles. So whichever car you drive, you will be covered, even with the smallest battery. Now onto the performance of the ES8. It has 2 motors, 544 horsepower, and 0 to 100 acceleration is done in 4.9 seconds. That's actually a very conservative figure. In independent testing, we've consistently clocked this car to be around 4.6 seconds. To put this performance into context, I was really fortunate to have driven the Aston Martin DBX when it was still doing some homologation work in China, and I was required to write a mini review. In the performance part of that review, I wrote that maybe because I'm exposed to some very fast electric SUVs, the performance of the DBX was actually a bit underwhelming. It's all about the in-gear acceleration. The ES8 being a pure electric car doesn't need to kick down. So the in-gear acceleration of this car from 40 kph to let's say 120 is mind-blowing. In terms of ride and comfort, this has the air suspension straight from Continental, so it's pretty comparable to a, let's say, Mercedes GLE. The ES8 uses an all-aluminium body, which contributes to some of the weight savings. Now I know this car doesn't sound very light at 2.4 tons, but when you compare it to, let's say, something like an Audi e-tron, which is a 5-seater and significantly smaller than this, the ES8 is over 200 kilos lighter. Now the range and efficiency. The ES8 comes standard with a 75 kilowatt-hour battery. That is good for roughly 390 kilometer WLTP. You can upgrade to the 100 kilowatt-hour battery, which can give you 500 kilometer WLTP. In EPA terms, that's roughly 420. In terms of efficiency, the ES8 is roughly comparable to the Raven generation Tesla Model X. The Play version still is not available in China. It is slightly more efficient than the Model X at low speeds and slightly less efficient at high speed. Now onto the dislikes of the ES8. You may have noticed in this video so far I have not mentioned handling. That's the part where I have a problem with it. The ES8 certainly is very fast and very comfortable, but having spent a long time in this car, I'm still not comfortable if I'm asked to push this car to its limit. I'm not talking about track driving. Let's say you're on your way to the airport and you're running close to the deadline. When you start to push in the ES8, you are aware of its immense size and weight at all times, especially under heavy braking. Just when I thought the nose should hold itself, it dives even lower, and that isn't good for driver confidence. I know it's very irrelevant for a 7-seater SUV to go on track, but I have done that multiple times, and this car has 540 horsepower, so you might do that one day as well. So just letting you know, this car on track is very fast. It is over 0.8 of a second faster than the Audi e-tron on the same day, on the same track, by the same driver. However, the process of extracting lap time out of this car is quite painful. You need to be a professional driver to do that. You need to factor in the understeer right from the corner entry all the way to corner exit. So this is a very fast car on track for its class, but in terms of driver involvement and driving pleasure, it's not quite there yet. Second dislike is its off-road capabilities, or the lack of. With such a rigid all-aluminium body, adaptive dampers, air suspension and powerful motors, this should be an absolute weapon going off-road. And I think with enough software development, the ES8 could be that car. Currently, this car's off-road performance is roughly similar to the Volvo XC90, but it could be so much more. When James Atwood from Autocar drove the ES8 back in June 2019, he wrote, "The biggest compliment you can pay the NIO ES8 is that driving one feels remarkably normal." While this comment doesn't sound all that inspiring, it is actually high praise coming from an experienced journalist like him, and considering this is NIO's first production car attempt. NIO later released a 5-seater version called the ES6 and a coupe SUV called the EC6. They dramatically outsold the Merceedes EQABC, BMW iX3 and the Audi e-tron combined in China at a comparable price level. Through the ES8, NIO became China's first private luxury car brand. It is not a half-price replacement of anything. It has a totally original concept and features. When the next Chinese luxury brand comes along, people would know it is not a pipe dream. Because it's been done before, the ES8 is where it all started.